At 3:02 in the morning, my front door detonated like it was behind on rent. I shot awake from a dead sleep, pulse pounding, as wood splintered and metal hinges screeched. A man wearing a bargain bin police shirt complete with a badge that looked like it came out of a cereal box bellowed, "HOA emergency sweep," at full volume. My hallway nightlight flickered like it was terrified, and my son home on leave. A Marine with mousetrap reflexes and nerves carved from stone stepped out of his room with calm eyes and his phone already recording. The intruder waved a flashlight like it was a weapon, his face blotchy and dripping sweat. Then came 3 words spoken in my son's crisp, controlled tone. "Identify yourself now." The man lunged forward, arms out, and Ethan responded instantly. 2 shots precise, deliberate, punched into the hardwood floor right beside the man's boots. Drywall dust burst up like cheap confetti from the over-penetration. The imposter backpedaled so violently he nearly took flight, shrieking like a wounded banshee, and then plowed face first into my umbrella stand, the one my wife had lovingly labeled "guests" in cheerful cursive. "My name is Nolan Pierce. I'm 52, amicably divorced, and I bought the corner lot in Birch Ridge because the real estate listing promised quiet 8 separate times. I checked. I do late-night copywriting for tech companies that use verbs like synergize and idulate with a straight face. I mind my own business. I water my lawn on the correct days. I pull my trash cans in before noon. I have never painted my house a non-approved color. Our HOA president is Mara Yates' helmet hair that could deflect small arms fire, pearls that clack like a metronome, and a smile that says, I've CC'd my lawyer twice. She calls herself Madam Compliance, printed it on real business cards, and we call her the Siren because whenever she starts talking, something unfortunate gets pulled over. She drives a white SUV with a custom plate that reads HOA Boss, and she parks it diagonally across 2 clubhouse spots because, of course, she does. Mara's crusade began 6 months ago with Operation Night Peace, a glossy, professionally printed pamphlet alleging criminal porch decor and illicit mailboxes. The mailboxes were standard black metal. The criminal decor was a sunflower wreath. She claimed a rash of vandalism was sweeping our tranquil streets. Translation: someone's teenage daughter peeled a tulip sticker off a stop sign. From that microscopic act of rebellion, Mara launched midnight welfare checks to ensure community safety and standards. The warning started small. She sent me a violation for my motion lights, accusing them of emitting aggressive lumens that created visual assault. My hedges trimmed to the exact HOA height were cited for threat geometry and angular hostility. When my son Ethan came home on leave and parked his truck in my driveway, she filed a complaint labeling it a militaristic presence undermining neighbor comfort. I ignored most of it and filed the notices in my circular file, also known as the recycling bin. But Mara does not tolerate being ignored. When I skipped her mandatory PM porch audit, something I did not know existed, she escalated. She taped a certified letter to my outdoor grill using packing tape. 3 pages, single-spaced, ending with, "Voluntary enforcement will proceed regardless," all caps. Neighbors whispered about a private security consultant on her payroll, a man in aviators who mistook recycling bins for suspects, and interrogated joggers about their authorization for physical activity in common areas. He went door to door at a M, flashing a plastic badge reading Neighborhood Enforcement Officer with enforcement misspelled. I'd heard stories. Old Mr. Chen said the man demanded his pedestrian permit while he walked his dog. The Hendersons claimed he photographed their son's skateboard and labeled it unsecured recreational equipment. I figured it was just Mara. All bark, no bite. Another power trip that would burn out. I was catastrophically wrong, which brings us to 3:02 a.m. On a Tuesday. The door kicked hard enough to crack the frame. Fake badge gleaming in the hallway light. Orders shouted that had zero legal foundation. And my son Ethan, 24, composed, trained for actual battlefields, and absolutely not a fan of home intruders moving into position with the kind of muscle memory forged in far more dangerous places. He issued the warning, firm and authoritative, identify yourself now, a command, not a question. Instead of complying, the intruder rushed him, arms out, either to grab or shove. I still don't know which. Ethan reacted textbook perfectly. 2 controlled shots into the floorboards beside the man's boots. Measured, deliberate. Splinters jumped like popcorn. The confined hallway amplified the noise until it felt like the walls rattled. The man's face drained from furious red to corpse white. He stumbled backward, tripped over himself, and slammed into the antique umbrella stand. My wife had painted guests on it during a craft phase. The irony was majestic. No blood. No Hollywood violence. Just instant panic and the intruder screaming, "I'm with the HOA. I'm with the HOA. Don't shoot." I dialed 911 while Ethan kept his stance and his camera trained on the man, who lay moaning under my wife's shamrock-decorated rain boots hanging on the coat rack. He whimpered about just following orders, and Madam Compliance authorized this. Real. Police showed up in 6 minutes fast. For our suburb with the exhausted expressions of people who hate paperwork, but love crystal clear evidence. They cuffed Mr. Bowling League badge, real name, Derek Pute, and, according to the body cam footage we later saw, heard him mumble in a defeated, concussed voice. Mara said, "Emergency powers." She said I had emergency powers. By sunrise, Birch Ridge was wide awake and aggressively curious. At least 15 neighbors stood outside in bathrobes, clutching coffee mugs, watching the police scene like it was primetime television. Officers spent 3 hours reviewing our security footage frame by frame. The door kick, the fake badge, the meltdown, the HOA sweep nonsense, something with no foundation in any law ever written, was all over the footage. Ethan's measured, controlled response, the only reason that fool was still alive, stood out cleanly. Just as notable was what the footage didn't show, any trace of legal authority, while officers cataloged the damage, snapping photos and logging every dent including the ones in my umbrella stand. A second patrol unit drifted down to Mara's house 4 doors away. She stepped out in a silk robe at 6:30 a.m., pearls still on, fully committed to the performance, even with the police at her door. From my wrecked doorway, I could see her gesturing wildly, clearly trying to sculpt some heroic narrative. It crumbled, immediately collapsing faster than a folding table at a toddler's birthday party. Within the hour, Detective Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman with a sharper tone, returned to my house carrying a folder. She explained that Mara had hired Community Sentinel Services, a business operating out of Upstore mailbox with a website straight out of 2009 and a contact page still filled with default lorem ipsum. She showed us a text conversation. At 2:30 a.m., Mara had texted Derek Pute my address with instructions: non-compliant resident, after-hours safety inspection, use an authoritative voice, intimidation acceptable. Rodriguez read it aloud in my living room with the horrified confusion of someone watching ketchup get poured onto a steak. Use authority voice, she repeated slowly, as though tasting vinegar. Intimidation acceptable. She typed that with her thumbs and hit send. She shook her head and scribbled something in her notebook that I'm fairly certain was just the word, wow. Then the citations began flying like parade confetti nobody asked for. Impersonating an officer for Derek, a felony in our state, conspiracy and unlawful entry for both, criminal mischief for my door, reckless endangerment for the whole circus. Officers praised Ethan's restraint more than once, clearly delighted at having such clean-cut evidence. They recommended reinforcing the door or even staying at a hotel if we felt unsafe. Mara, in a delusional attempt at reclaiming control, sent an email at a.m. announcing an emergency board meeting. The sergeant, reading it over my shoulder, dryly suggested she get an emergency lawyer instead. 2 nights later, the emergency town hall convened, called by the remaining HOA board members who suddenly remembered they possessed spines. The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees. Folding chairs groaned under shifting bodies. The podium had seen too many bake sale rants. The room was packed. Standing room only. People brought popcorn. Real popcorn. The city attorney, Marcus Webb, sharp suit, Sharper delivery presented the case like he'd been waiting his entire career for such delicious absurdity. A slide deck projected in crisp HD lit up the wall. Slide 1 displayed the fake badge. Price sticker still attached. $19.99 plus tax. The room snickered. Slide 2 showed Mara's text messages. USC authority voice rendered in oversized Comic Sans. Whoever made that slide deserved hazard pay and a medal. Slide 3 displayed the Community Sentinel invoice, clearly printed on a dying home printer. A stock watermark Getty Images still ghosted across the badge logo. The room erupted. Even the stenographer grinned. Then came the gut punch. The HOA's insurance representative stood up, tailored suit, haunted expression, looking like he hadn't slept since this debacle started. With the grim tone of a man declaring war, he announced that the policy did not cover vigilante enforcement, pseudo-security operations, or unauthorized personnel acting under fabricated authority. Translation: the HOA was financially naked. Every penny of this catastrophe would come from the HOA reserves, which meant from everyone's pockets. Gasps rippled through the room like someone had announced an earthquake. Mr. Chen, victim of the infamous pedestrian permit interrogation, shouted furiously, "I pay dues for this? For this insanity?" Patricia, a quiet resident I'd only ever seen at block parties, waved a broken garden gnome overhead as Exhibit B, raging about how Derek had kicked it during one of his patrols. The board voted right then. No private discussion. The motion: remove Mara as president and from the board entirely. The vote tally projected like a reality show elimination. 47-20. Even her husband Frank abstained, sitting in the back, staring at his shoes like they contained prophecies. He'd driven separately. That told us everything. Legal consequences arrived. Like in HOA newsletter, you actually want to read hand-delivered by a process server who looked way too thrilled with his job. Derek Pute pled guilty to impersonating an officer and unlawful entry. His sentence: 6 months in county jail, suspended to 18 months probation, plus 300 hours of community service with a special assignment. He had to repaint the entire Birch Ridge clubhouse, inside and out, under police supervision. Every stroke was watched. Every wall inspected. The irony was exquisite. But Mara got the full weight of the system. Charged with conspiracy, criminal solicitation, and reckless endangerment. The prosecutor, a woman who clearly lived for airtight cases, threw the book, the shelf, and the whole library at her. The preliminary hearing took 4 hours. Ethan and I attended. We sat quietly in the back as Mara kept turning to glare at us like we were the villains. 3 weeks later came sentencing. The courthouse was packed with Birch Ridge residents who'd taken vacation days for the spectacle. Judge Ricks, silver-haired and steady, reviewed the file with the precision of someone determined to nail every detail. The penalties rolled out like a financial avalanche. $12,000 in criminal fines. $8,000 to me for the door, repairs, security upgrades, and what he called extreme mental distress. Another $15,000 to cover the HOA's legal fees and deductible, payable over 5 years. Mara's face went from pearl white to tomato red as the numbers mounted. Then the restraining order. She had to stay 500 feet from my property at all times. In Birch Ridge, that meant she basically needed a map and compass just to navigate her own neighborhood. She'd have to detour around the entire block to reach the main road. The judge looked almost pleased about this logistical punishment. She was barred from serving on any HOA board, committee, or neighborhood group for 5 years. Her Madam Compliance business cards were now just overpriced scraps. And finally, the judge's personal flourish. She had to complete a 16-week course titled Civics and Boundaries, Understanding the Limits of Private Authority, taught by a retired judge known for beginning each class by shredding a fake badge while lecturing about the government's monopoly on legitimate force. When the judge finished, Mara shot to her feet so quickly her chair screamed across the floor. Her voice trembling with indignation, she protested, "This is a miscarriage of justice. I was protecting our community. I was maintaining standards." Her voice cracked on standards. Judge Rick stared at her over his glasses, face carved from stone. "Sit down, Mrs. Yates. You're fortunate you aren't facing felonies and prison time. Your reckless actions could have gotten someone killed. Count your blessings and your lawyer's fees." Her exhausted attorney tugged her back into her seat by the elbow. She muttered under her breath, pearls clacking together frantically like a warning rattle no one cared about anymore. Every click marked another second of her reign as HOA tyrant, slipping irreversibly into the